Hi, I'm Glenn Rogers, and this is Biblical Insights. The title of our video today is Why Sing? We're doing a series of lessons on worship, what worship is, and the different components of worship. And one of the very important components of worship is singing. I don't think you can go to any church anywhere and not have some form of music or singing. Hopefully, preferably singing, not just music. Music can be just instrumental music without any voices, without any people being involved in the singing. And I think that's not what God intended. But that's part of what we're going to be looking at today and talking about in this video. Why do Christians sing? Why is it so important? Why is there so much emphasis placed on the idea of singing in worship? Well, there are a couple of passages that I want to begin with, and we're going to read them out of the Simplified New Testament. One of these is in the book of Ephesians, Paul's letter to the church in Ephesus, chapter 5, verses 18 and 19. Paul says, do not drink so much that you get drunk. That leads to all kinds of bad behavior. Instead, allow the Holy Spirit to fill your heart and mind so you can teach and encourage one another in song, raising your voices in thanks to God as your heart is filled with the melody of praise. Part of what Paul says there is one of the reasons that we sing, one of the things that we intend to accomplish with our singing is teaching and encouraging each other as we listen to the words of the song, and that's very important. The words that we're singing are meant to teach and encourage, and the melody of praise creates an emotive response in us. It fills us with love and joy and all of the things that are part of Christian worship. And so singing is very important from that perspective. Now, Paul, in writing another letter to a different group of Christians, to the Christians in Colossae, this is in his letter called Colossians, chapter 3, verse 16, he said, "And let the words of Jesus live in you so you can teach and encourage one another as you worship God in song." Now, both of those passages mention this idea of teaching and encouraging in song. And I think that becomes a very important idea that we need to think about. When you look at the history of worship and worship of God, the larger portion of the Bible, the Old Testament, has a good deal in there about worship, and there's lots of material that we would call devotional material that has to do with worship to God, reflection, thinking. The Psalms is mostly what I'm talking about now. And in there are lots of psalms that were originally songs that they wrote, and they were often accompanied by music, either a lyre or trumpets or tambourines or something like that. There were different kinds of musical instruments, not all the kinds that we have today because they hadn't been invented yet. But in their world, in their culture, the kind of instruments they had, they utilized in accompanying the singing of songs in praise to God. And the content, not just the sound, and of course, the musical instruments were never the point. Nobody ever went and played musical instruments just to make a pretty sound. That was never, ever the point. And we'll talk about that more as we go on through our video this morning. But if there was musical accompaniment, it was simply an accompaniment. The main point was the song, the heartfelt expression coming from the person, singing words that had meaning, that said something about God and how great God is and the blessings that we enjoy because we have a relationship with God. And when a group of people came together to worship, then part of what they did in singing these songs is that it would be an act of worship, and they would be worshiping God by the things they sang, and they would also be teaching and encouraging others by the message of the songs. Okay, so that was a very, very important feature of worship in the Old Testament. Then, when we come into the New Testament, we learn that the Old Covenant that was just set up for the Israelites was not a universal covenant. It was just for the descendants of Abraham, just for the Jews. Okay, so all that stuff you read in there in the Old Testament hasn't got anything to do with us. Never did have, never will have. Okay, that's all just to the Jews of the ancient world and their covenant relationship with God was given through Moses. It's called the Law of Moses. And that was all leading up to the coming of the Messiah, Jesus. Okay, and when Jesus came and lived and died, that old covenant was fulfilled and set aside, and a new covenant was established. And this new covenant is universal. It's for everybody. The old covenant was just for the Jews, just for the Israelites. No, it didn't have anything to do with anybody else in the world. It had only to do with the Jews. The new covenant is universal. It has to do with everybody. And God made some changes when the new covenant was put into place. And one of the things he did was to streamline worship. Okay, he made it very, 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 very simple. In the old covenant, there was a tabernacle, and later there was a temple, and there was a priesthood, and there was an altar, and there was incense, and there was the Ark of the Covenant, and there were special clothing and special implements that they used for different things. I mean, it was very, very complex and complicated system, and all of that was taken away and set aside when the old covenant was fulfilled and replaced by the new covenant. And in the new covenant, it's meant to be not just for the Jews in Palestine, but for every culture in the world, all over the world. And so God streamlined it. He took out all the other stuff and made it very, 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 very simple. The only physical things you need for Christian worship is bread and wine. And you can get bread and wine pretty much anywhere, and it's not expensive. Okay, so it's very simple. You don't need a special building. You don't need special clothing. You don't need special implements. You do not need instruments of music. You don't need anything, because the concept is singing. Singing with your voice. People coming together in an assembly, singing, and in that process, worshiping God and teaching and encouraging each other with the songs that they're singing. So it's important to understand that historical context and understanding Christian worship as something that it has to do with a collective act of singing. One of the things that bothers me about Christian worship today in most churches, not all of them, but in most churches, is that they put so much emphasis on musical instruments, and sometimes you get an entire band up there on the stage. Used to be there was an organ or maybe a piano, and then they started bringing in all sorts of other instruments, and now in some churches, especially the bigger, more successful, what we call them here, mega churches, they have almost a band up there. It looks like a rock band, a Christian rock band, and the music is the thing. The music, but you can't find that anywhere in the Bible. Okay, now I've already said that in the Old Testament they did use instruments, but they're very simple, and the instruments weren't the focus. The singing was the focus. The message of the song was the focus. Okay? not the instruments, not the sound that the instruments made. That was intended originally just to be an accompaniment to the singing. Because people say, well, I can't sing, I can't carry a tune, or whatever. If I have to just sing, if there's no musical accompaniment, then this sounds terrible, I can't do it. All right, here's the thing. God doesn't care what it sounds like. God doesn't care whether you can sing or not, whether it sounds pretty, whether you hit the note just exactly right. What God cares about is that you make the effort, is that you're part of a group of people who are singing praises to God. He doesn't care whether you're on key or not. He just doesn't care. Doesn't matter to him. Okay? So, think of it this way. A little child who's learning to sing, right? And the mama and daddy are very, very proud of the child who's learning to sing. And the child can't sing. They're just learning. I mean, their voice is all over the place. They miss the notes. They sing the song badly. But when they're done, the parents smile. They clap. They say, good job. You did great. Parents, when a child is learning how to sing, parents don't care whether the kid gets the notes right or not. That's not the point. The point is that the child is singing. And that's the way God feels about us. We're his children. We're his babies. And we're trying to sing as a form of expression, as a form of worship, expressing what we feel in our hearts in thanks and adoration and praise to God. And in the words of the song, we're trying to teach and encourage everybody present, you see. And so God really doesn't care if it sounds all that great. Okay? Now, it's nice. We care if it sounds good. But the focus on musical instruments is the wrong focus. And when you get a big group of people up there playing a lot of music, and the drummer is drumming this and that, and the guitar player and the going to worship is not going to a Christian rock concert. Okay? Worship is not for entertainment. We don't go there to be entertained by the music. And then, we're also going to listen to something that this guy says as he's preaching. Yeah, no, that's the wrong focus. But that is the focus in some churches, and they've just got it wrong. They're just wrong. Okay? The focus is not on the music. The focus is on the singing. The focus is on the words, the message of the song that teaches and encourages. Okay? And so we need to understand that. We need to make sure that if we go to a church that uses instrumental music, that they get the idea, okay, that the instruments are not the primary focus. Play them quietly so you can still hear the singing. Many times when you go to worship services in some churches, if you look around, most of the people aren't even singing. During the song service, most of the people aren't singing. They're just listening to the instruments and a few people who might be singing. Maybe there's some people up front who are singing, but most people are just sitting there, standing there, and not singing. That's not right. That's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches that the collective group of people who come together are to be singing. They're to be singing. And so somewhere, somehow, whether they're seeing it in a book or on a screen up front or whatever, the words need to be there so people can sing the words. And the words are meant to teach and encourage. And that means that the people who are writing the songs need to understand enough of biblical teaching and enough theology that they can put some good teaching in the song. Some of the songs we sing are so simplistic. It's just a repeating of some very basic phrases over and over again. And that's not good songwriting. And it doesn't make for very good worship, because part of the purpose of worshiping in song is to praise and adore God. Yes. But the other part is a back and forth between the people, the teaching and encouraging. Paul said that in both of the passages where he talks about singing, and he mentions in both of those teaching and encouraging one another. So that's a very important part of it. It's not about the instruments, not about a lot of music, and it's not about a performance. Okay, it's not about bringing in some personality to stand up there and sing in front of the church and entertain everybody. That's not the point. The point is that all of the people who come together to sing and praise God and to teach and encourage one another in the words of the song and the message that they sing. Now, someone could say, well, but why singing? Why do we have to do singing? I don't sing very well, why do we have to sing? Well, because there's just something about singing. When people are happy, they tend to sing. And we tend to like music that makes us happy. Now, we also sometimes like music that's kind of sad when let's say there's been a romance and it's gone bad, and so somebody sings a sad song about this, and we're kind of drawn to that sort of thing. But the reason we are is because there is an emotive and an evocative response. There's something about singing that gets way down deep inside us and touches us in a way that nothing else can. And then what's way down deep inside there, right, it also comes out in the form of singing. And it comes out in a way that is different from when we're just talking about something. Okay? So singing is a form of expression and a form of communication that is very fundamental to the human soul and the human spirit. It gets way down deep inside, and it goes in and then it comes out, right? And so that's where the worship comes in. But that's also where we enjoy a feeling of community when we're all singing together, right? And that's why it's a collective experience of participation by everybody there singing, not listening to a concert. And that's one of the biggest complaints that I have about contemporary Christian worship in America. Half of the time you're there, it's like listening to a concert of some sort, a Christian concert. And that's never what God intended. Old Testament or New, it's just not what God intended. Christian worship isn't entertainment. It is a group participation. And one of the ways that everybody can participate is through singing. See, when the congregation is being led in prayer, there's a person up there praying. Well, everybody's not praying at the same time, at least not verbally, right? I mean, then you would just have a cacophony of voices all saying different things and everything. It wouldn't make any sense, all right? And so when the preacher is preaching, you don't have everybody talking at once. You got one guy up there talking. When somebody's praying, you don't have everybody talking at once. You have one person up there praying. When we're doing the Lord's Supper, again, it's not something. There is a group participation element in that. We'll talk about that when we get to that series, that video in our series. But most of what we do in singing, there's a worship leader, and we're listening. We're not participating in an active sense, except when we're singing and when we're taking the Lord's Supper. Those two things are active participation, and those two things are extremely important. So again, we'll talk about communion again in another video, but in this one we're talking about singing, okay? So the way that everybody worships together, the way everybody participates simultaneously in worship and in teaching and in encouraging is through singing. And so that's why we sing. And God doesn't care whether you can carry a tune or not. He doesn't care if you understand about harmony and chords and this music and that musical notation in whatever way. God doesn't care about any of that. All he cares about is that you sing, that you let what's there in your heart come out as you participate in the song service with everybody who's there singing songs of praise to God, which teach and encourage everybody that's there as you pay attention to the words of the song. Not so much the melody, but the words of the song. That's what's important. And so if you're a person who has some musical ability and you want to write songs for worship, make sure that you understand it's not just the melody, it's the words, it's the message. And you have to know enough Bible and enough theology to get the words and the message right so that you're teaching something that's going to be helpful to people. That's an important part of worship. Well, I hope you found this helpful or interesting. And as always, I would encourage you, read your Bible, pray, go to church, and may God bless.